Welcome to Modern Marketing Messages, the leading podcast discussing the latest and greatest in both online and offline marketing tactics, strategies, and trends. I'm your host, Taylor Karg, marketing content writer at AmericanEagle.com. In this episode, we're diving into a topic that every e-commerce business grapples with, data quality. Recorded at the 2024 AmericanEagle.com forum, this session titled Dirty Data Detox, Enhancing E-commerce Success Through Quality Data, is led by Brendan Cameron, Strategic Account Director and Solution Engineer at AmericanEagle.com. Brendan takes us through the critical role of clean, accurate, and actionable data in driving search rankings, reducing overhead, and minimizing returns. You will also hear practical tips and best practices for maintaining good data hygiene. Let's join the session and learn how to transform your data into a competitive edge.
Yeah, everyone, welcome to the funniest title I could give for the most serious subject in e-commerce. Dirty Data Detox, Enhancing E-commerce Success Through Quality Data. And I'm Brendan Cameron. I'm one of the strategic account directors, specifically in manufacturing and distribution, where it's usually the worst data to deal with. In today's, we're going to go through the following pieces. Mainly it's understanding why data quality is important, because a lot of times this gets deprioritized, and I feel it shouldn't be. We'll also talk about the challenges where you feel like you're climbing an unclimbable mountain, and then ways that we could help you, ways that you could help yourself, and then going into, I think, a requirement for every presentation this day and age, AI, technologies, and other fun things that can help you. But to start things out, understanding the importance of data quality, it is the backbone of your digital economy. And honestly, whether it's e-commerce transactional data or not, it's just as important. This is driving efficiency from your customers. You always hear, we want a frictionless environment. You get that by having good information on the site. Innovation, you start doing things like product builders, measurement calculators, configurators, all those things run off of data. And then, of course, growth, because the worse data you have, the more returns you might have to process, the more touches a salesperson's going to have to do to validate the information. So you're not going to scale if every salesperson has to touch every single e-commerce order that comes in. And my favorite part, how does it impact your daily life? We'll work with the people in the room today. I love my audience participation because you're not sleeping. How many people think they have data that needs to be worked on? Love it. How many people know what to do? Okay, a couple. This is perfect. So to start things out, why data quality is important. This is your decision-making process. You want complete and accurate information because that means your customers will turn into impulse buyers. They'll turn into targeted people. Targeted customers have a 4x conversion rate online. And they also have a 40% decrease in return rates. You also open up the avenues to personalization. Being able to identify what data goes into what region, sector, or market you work within, you're going to start being able to personalize that information directly to that customer. If you know that you have a maintenance manager on your site and your data is flagged to be helping for maintenance, building repairs, you could start actually personalizing, throwing data or giving product call outs to them and actually getting a lot of that personalized experience you think is not typically possible without those fancy AI tools and whatnot. Efficacy. Good product data means less calls and touch points. I kind of touched on it earlier. I know a lot of my clients who they will submit an order from the website into their ERP system and it automatically goes into a queue because a sales rep has to validate that order and the product information being correct. That does not automate the process. That does not free your team's time. It just slows them down with one more responsibility. As I mentioned too, it also gives you that opening for innovation. Being able to, let's say, do a wire cutting configurator. Let's say do a full system schematic to help buy components for some of the complete systems you do. I work in HVAC and there's something called an AHRI code where you only get that certification if you buy a complete system. And you need good data quality to say these are all the components to that system, so you get that AHRI certification. The next one I think is honestly the most important. It's your competitive advantage. An e-commerce site is beyond transactional. You want to have promoters. You want to build those relationships, and you want to build those relationships necessarily without any human interaction. I personally have never gone to DeWalt.com personally. I've gone to HomeDepot.com because I know where their service manuals are. I know where their warranty cards are. I know where their instruction manuals are. So I buy my tools from Home Depot. Then I go back to Home Depot and I download all the resources I need from them. The final piece is economic value, being able to identify opportunities in the market. You may have a new sector or industry that you could sell to. You may have a new demographic. You may have new products that you can sell. But you need to have that data in a quantifiable state in order to take advantage and analyze them. Everyone talks about like business intelligent tools, building those visual graphs that look really cool. But if you have 8 categories for the same type of product, or a product in 9 different categories because your information architecture is bad, those graphs aren't going to look very cool because everything's going to be even. When I start looking at data quality, I look at a couple key dimensions. These are the questions you ask when you're looking at your data to understand how is my data quality. The first one is accuracy. You want to essentially assure that your customer has accurate information in order to make that purchase. So you're working with junction boxes. You want to make sure you have the right number of outlets, the right dimensions. You're dealing with, certain types of connectors. You want to make sure they're suitable for the environment, if they're waterproof, explosion proof, flammable or not. This will also save you if you remember the thing that happened to Amazon in 2019, where they had a pricing data quality issue and they discounted $13,000 telephoto lenses for sale for $94. So if anyone asks what's the importance of it is, it's like, well, we could save you $20,000 per sale. The next one is completeness. This is probably the most important one when I talked about having that competitive advantage and becoming a resource to your customer. Having a full holistic view on all of the information your product can provide. So that means, again, selling the cable connectors, selling a t-shirt, having the material, having the color, having the washing requirements, if it's dry clean only, having the P65 warnings. Having a full complete thing means you not only turn into the transactional site, you turn into that resource to your customer. Consistency. This is probably one of the biggest pain points I deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's what everyone talks about. Half of my products are fractional, half of them are decimal. Half of them I have in double quotes, half of them are, say the word inches. This is going to be the problem that never goes away. This is the problem you have to prioritize. Understand the importance of every attribute and how it is to the customer. And that's how you evaluate it, because you're never going to clean up 20, 30, 50. I have some clients with 1,400 attributes. Home Depot's not even done with it yet. Yeah, there you go. Shout out to Jen. Here it is, the M7 size bolt, which happens to be 0.275 inch diameter. It's right on Home Depot's site, so they don't even have it done yet. They're still working toward it. Finally, relevance. This is going to be what we're talking about when we start talking about personalization, automation, and also prioritizing your consistent attributes. Because are these attributes relevant to your business process? Are they relevant to your customer? Do they tie into the importance? Is it a product where we need to assure if it's a freight only item or if it can be shipped parcel? Is it hazardous like a battery where you can't ship it via air and you have to do ground only? That's relevant to your website and transactions. So these are the 4 ways that I measure, and they could be done as easily as saying A to F ranking, a 1 to 10 ranking. That we'll get to in the practice coming up in later slides, but this is your starting point. This is kind of your guide. Now we talk about the challenges. This is about 30% of my emails every day and about 2 hours of every day in meetings. Right now, volume and diversity of your data from various vendors and suppliers is your biggest pain point. Because let's say all of your information is perfect. It's fractional. It uses double quotes for inches from one vendor. Then you have another vendor, and they're doing everything by decimal, and they spell out the word inches. It's one of those things to where this is that overwhelming point, because even if you make it perfect, the second you introduce a new vendor or supplier, that perfection can be gone overnight. And this is going to be the biggest pain point when we're talking about scaling and growth, because you're going to want to offer more products. You're going to want to increase your SKU count. This is going to be one of those things that's around every corner. So the first thing we do is a technology base. Data integration. When we have multiple data sources, we're talking about taking up time to evaluate each of the sources, talking about time actually programming and developing it, getting a centralized data point. This is where PIMs kind of shine the light on things where they say they could fix all your problems. Here's just a short list right here, since it is pretty small. You could get your product data from ERP, suppliers and vendors, your PIM, a DAM, a warehouse, reviews like product reviews, media servers, pricing engines, recommendation engines. All of this stuff can have different data quality for each source, and each of these points can have multiple sources within them as well. So you're going to need to build a plan to identify how we enhance every source of data and make it consistent across the global level. And when you start working on that, you're going to come across your next challenge: human error. I have fat fingers, and this is probably what you come across a lot. Typos, data governance, spacing issues, having symbols and grammar issues. And again, probably the most important one I set for last, second to last, is the company voice. Even if you have descriptions that come in beautifully, they're vendor supplied, so that means they probably go out to all your competitors. And they also have a neutral tone that showcases the supplier, the manufacturer, not your company. So all of this takes a lot of time to run through. All of it takes a lot of work. And these are the things that we need to prioritize. So jumping back to that data quality assessment, which are the ones that are most important to you, and how do we prioritize them for each individual use case? We'll now run into tech limitations. Whenever we start looking at the quality of data that comes across every source, ERP systems are usually the source of truth for a lot of the business processes. But the problem is they'll have abbreviated descriptions and names. They'll have limited attribute fields to where you could actually enrich your content. They don't allow for rich text. It's plain text only. So there goes embedding videos or having embedded images and graphs and everything like that. We also look at a PIM or a DAM. These are the things that you probably get calls from people saying that they're going to solve all your data worries. You now are increasing your total cost of ownership. You now have to learn a new technology to maintain it. You have to put hours aside to allocate. And probably the biggest thing that I've seen is it actually brings your required hours up instead of reducing them like they said, because it gives you more knowledge and visibility. So now where you thought you had decent quality, they're actually ranking it 10, 20% complete or consistent. So it's kind of the wisdom of observation there. We already talked about multiple data sources. And then finally, the scaling issues. Again, as you increase the number of records or the number of products, you're going to increase that workload over again. These are the best ways to fix these issues. The first thing is putting together a data governance plan. Essentially, what we're looking at is being able to address those key points and factors of what makes you specifically have better data quality and acceptable data quality. You need to make sure that you understand that, where all of that information is going to be stored, and then who is going to have ownership of maintaining it. And this is where teams come into play. This is where the AI comes into play. But most importantly, your plan comes first. If you look up and research, I would recommend you Google EIM, or Enterprise Information Management Plan. This is essentially a digital maturity model of an EIM. And this is a 5-10-year roadmap. This is not something that you do overnight. This is not something you plan to knock out in Q1 of 2025. I think we are sharing this, so don't worry about trying to read all of it. But if you look, it starts all the way at the very beginning to educate your business leaders and make sure they understand. And the best way to make them understand is you give them that data quality audit based on those 4 pillars. Make sure they understand the importance, the pain points, and the solution. Mike and Tony at American Eagle, if you come to them with a problem and no solution, you'll get kicked out the door faster than anyone else. So I will always recommend making sure to have this plan in order. Educate the team on what it means to have good data quality and what the 3, 6, 18-month roadmap looks like into that. As you get approval, you go into the actual strategies to enhance it. What are your most important fields? What attributes are going to be critical to that? What customers use to search and filter your products on the site? Are there things where we have swatches for t-shirts, where we have multicolor? How do we handle these types of use case scenarios that are specific to your company? And essentially, all of that strategy will then move into putting in management and ownership for those quality updates. So when we're talking about who is going to be the project sponsor, who's going to be the owner, maybe if you have a couple thousand SKUs, you have one owner. Maybe you have one owner per category or product line. This is all going to be based on where your starting point is. This is also where people might get a little too advantageous. And while they do potentially sell via drop ship or via blind shipping of manufacturers 1 million products, start with your stocked items. Stock with the 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 products. This is definitely that. I will give bonus points because I'm completely blanking on the name, but the John Candy movie where he eats the old 76er, you just got to do it one bite at a time. And I'm embarrassed I can't remember that movie. Great Outdoors. There you go. Bonus points. Once you get your owners and leadership for whether it's your entire product catalog or every section, you need to put that business plan together. Because depending on how the variables are with your product categorization, I have clients selling fasteners all the way up to full CNC machines. Those requirements and priorities are going to be different, even on a category by category level. So we want to have the same thing you would look into going into a project. User acceptance testing scenarios, stories, ties into functionality and development. These are essentially projects you're putting together, which are potentially developer free. It's just content and data entry, but they're projects nonetheless. Once you're able to get your budget approved, in this case, it's going to probably be mostly time because we're already juggling, 6 jobs in e-commerce at one time. You want to get that approval. You want to make sure that it's okay to start doing some of these initiatives. And as long as you prepped your business plan and you pitched it to management properly to show the importance and ROI, you should have no problem getting that awarded time management. We're then going to put together a typical project plan. These are sprints. These are backlog items. Again, this is a normal project. You're not going to just be able to go into Excel, hit Control H, and Replace all the cases of IN with a double quote. So handle it in usable, manageable bites, put together a full backlog, prioritize it, even put together an MVP or minimum viable product that says, hey, once we hit this step, we could do a push live, we could do a sync, and we could actually go into that next phase of measurement and management. Because no matter how perfect your project plan is, it is subjective at the end of the day. Once you get to that MVP and you launch all of that new product data, you're going to find out there were holes in your ideas. Maybe customers are using a different attribute. Maybe you improved the search quality so much with good data, you now found another hole. It is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's never going to be over. But you're putting together the best practices to maintain it. This is also intern fodder, as long as you have good documentation. So, I talked about all these things, project plans, sprints, management, updating product data in bulk. How do you do that? To this day, I stand by Excel. Again, we'll get to some of the other options here in a second, but I took statistics in college, and that was the best class I ever took as a business major. There are macros, there are filters, there are VLOOKUPs, conditional formatting, all these things to where whenever you get pitched by a technology provider that says, we have completeness scores, we have this, we have, best practices, that honestly is all doable within the platform if you just take some of that time aside to do it. This may be the best first phase, because the last thing you need to have happen to you, putting together the project plan, putting together the pitch to management and getting the budget approval, getting the PIM, and then either failing to complete the implementation, which I've seen all too often, or getting it done and not having a long, thought out, ongoing process, and then having the quality drop off a cliff again. I think I've badmouthed it enough. I should talk it up a little bit. But PIMs are the tool that pretty much takes Excel and puts everything behind a button instead of you having to learn all the functions. You want to make sure that all the values in this field look good, a PIM tells you. You want to make sure that I could notify Kevin and say a bunch of products that you own are wrong. A PIM does that. It has messaging, tracking, and workflows. You want to be able to quickly grab product data from 6 different sources and throw it into a single product record. A PIM can do that. It does everything for a price that would typically cost you time in SQL and Excel and whatever it is. So if you can have the budget, if you can have the plan put together to afford it, it is that step in scaling. I will say, though, it's not the dream reached right off the bat. I would say I deal with about a 30% rate where PIM implementation projects are abandoned within the first 18 months. And now they just have a 3-year contract that's just sitting there unfinished and unused. The final step to this is what's called an MDM. Has anyone ever heard of an MDM? This is PIM evolved. This essentially, it stands for Master Data Management. It is your centralized data beyond products. This is your standardized customer data. This is your standardized financial data, your standardized fulfillment data. This is where you see those Fortune 500 manufacturers, the Procter & Gamble's and all that. I share this with our American Eagle customers. I hope everyone gets to this, but don't let anyone sell you this. This is something to where you have 7-figure licenses, you think your ERP implementation process was rough, MDM is worse. But It is the end all be all, and it is where you will end up as time moves on, because this will perfect your data model across the board if you put in enough time and good practice. Another place where I see a lot of this fail is they have a marketing person own product data, or they have one member of the e-commerce team manage product data, or they have the director of e-commerce manage product data. This is who manages product data. I understand that not everyone has this, and of course, this is where American Eagle can step in and help with certain people and spots. But the next time you have one of your engineers say, it's not my job to put this field in there, it is. Next time you have a salesperson say, my customer said our data sucks, and you go, why, what sucks? They go, no, it just sucks. No, that's wrong. Go back. This is a company-wide event. This is the same thing I talk about, that e-commerce websites, transactional websites are a holistic operation. Not marketing, it's not IT, not even an e-commerce team. It's company-wide. The same thing with product data quality. You're going to need help from everyone because it's so big and it's so specialized. No one's going to be able to have all the answers. So when we talk about data ownership, this is typically how I recommend that team structure to be. Of course, you're going to have ownership at the very top. They're going to be the informed consulted group. They're the ones that's approving the budgets, improving the initiatives, giving insight on what they see operationally on maybe targeted pieces. Also, any strategy, analytics, or sales team members giving feedback, what the customers say, what the vendors say, any outside critical thoughts and information. They need to have clear and concise leaders that can actually tell you what's wrong. And then you have the product owner themselves. They're the project manager. They're the person that handles the sprints, the meetings, the strategies, the presentations. And you could see everyone involved: creative, data entry, marketing. It's very holistic here. And I'm glad everyone could get this presentation, because you should use this when you're talking to ownership. The one thing I did leave out is, because we do have manufacturers here, we do have distributors here, and I forgot to bring my portable cage match setup. But to back the manufacturers, they do want to help any resellers, any direct-to-consumer e-commerce, any distributors. Manufacturers vehemently want to improve their product data. They're just getting hit with the same thing that your sales team is probably telling your team. Product data sucks with no guidance. So manufacturers are in here, probably discussed with the product manager, technical writer, or product owner themselves. But they need to be informed of specifically how and what they need to improve. Hey, we just started selling to all of Europe, and you have all the data in inches and imperial. In order to sell there, we really need metric. You'd be surprised how forthright they'd be on providing that data, because the more you sell, the more they sell. But if you just say, hey, your product data sucks, we can't sell anything in Europe, it's not going to help. And the best way to get that feedback is through audits and monitoring. This is your analytics team, the Google. This is heat mapping with Hotjar, surveys, whatever you can get your hands on. Internally on the left is your audits and monitoring. This is where you could go in and take a look at your data model, take a look at analytics, see what your top use filters are in your search, see what keywords are being used, where the gap is. And you could objectively put together strategies and sprints based on what you could see analytically. You'll also see on the right side going through the full data lifecycle and making sure that you could understand what point you're at, because the last thing you want to do is go from putting together a data model and then try to jump directly into monitoring. Everything should have the same cycle. Don't try to skip beats. you'll just end up making more of a mess than when you started. So when we get into the best practices and recommendations, start small. Take one bite at a time. Easy pieces. This is unending. That's the bad news. The good news is, though, is not all data is equal. You're not built for scale, but this is. And open communication with all of your suppliers, vendors, engineers is key. I got in a fight with my wife the other day. We didn't talk to each other. Guess what? It didn't get better. It got worse. Keep the communication lines open. Make sure that everyone understands that you're in it together. You can take a look right here. Here's a before. I identified some key areas that need help with. Outdated, inaccurate information. Look at how much better that can look just with some small little pieces. Prioritizing certain data points, updating certain things, getting a new image that could be bigger, higher resolution, that type of thing. Tech does not equal automatic. I know I've talked a lot of trash about these systems, but they sell them as a turnkey solution that fixes all your problems. It just gives you a tool to put work in. There's also an increased total cost of ownership. You're trading in your time for your company's money. And I'm getting to AI. This is what AI looks like. I had this same slide earlier this year. I did a presentation, I think February, March. It was actually half this big. And I guarantee you in 18 months, 50% of these logos will not be here anymore. So I don't know what I want to put my trust in to build this whole long-term solution, only for my technology provider to get bought up by Google or go out of business. Most importantly, develop that empathy. Understand that your manufacturers and your suppliers feel you. And they want to support you. Don't get mad at them. Tell them how they can improve. Same thing with your customers. There might be bounces. There might be people leaving that haven't completed transactions. Find out why. NPS scores and CSAT scores are very subjective, but also the trending information is very important. People say, they'll leave a 1 just because they're angry at me that one day. That one NPS score is not important. It's long-term. So here's all the ways that you could build that empathy. Taking a look at your competition, understanding who's using products, what their wants and needs are, the ecosystem, the trends in the market, what people's perception is of you. Understanding the voice of the customer, identifying who they are, what they want, what data you can glean from them, putting all that together to make sure that your sprints are being utilized properly. Now, everyone's favorite topic. For anyone, for some reason that doesn't know, generative AI. It is something that writes content for you. The problem with that is the highlight right here. It's trained on very large data sets. If your data quality in that data set is bad, the Gen AI will be bad. But this is what I see in the future coming in. It'll create text, it'll create descriptions really, really well, if you have a good base to start on. Even doing summaries, alt image text. Translations will be a huge benefit. Everyone suddenly could turn into an international resource because it can automatically start translating things. It's pretty creepy. Even doing some coding and development work. You want to do a cool little div or a web app, it could probably get you started. Technical documentation. We actually just completed a project for Lenovo where it built personalized PDF brochures where I just type in who my customer is, gave them the product data information, and it created everything, full graphics and everything. The list goes on and on. But here's the thing, is regulatory changes are also on the horizon. The manufacturer should have ownership on what the data is, because guess what? They might be liable. If you put in a Prop 65 flag or an emissions rating flag or a hazardous flag or miss it, is it you that's liable because you mislabeled something? Or is that the manufacturer's responsibility? This is where that open communication is key. Sometimes you need to communicate to the manufacturer to help protect your partner. Retail and distribution. Everyone talks about it. How can I get a competitive pricing scraper? How do I understand if my customer is looking for value or if they're just looking for the lowest number? Well, if they're going for the lowest number, they're going to not shop with you regardless on how good your product data is. You might as well eliminate that as an option by giving them good product data. You also don't want to give them misleading information, bad dimensions, bad number of outlets, bad compatibility pieces, all that type of thing. And then finally, especially with the rise of Avalara, TaxJar, live chat, AI bots, government data. What classification is this product? What tax codes does it need to follow? Is this up for tax exemption? All of these types of laws and regulations, that's all stem from product data. So, in conclusion, data quality is in fact important no matter what anyone says. And use this presentation to convince anyone who will listen. I'll be there standing right by your side. When you're looking to prove how important data quality is, use those key dimension factors. That's going to give you a starting point, your current state. It'll also tell you probably some challenges that you have to come up against. Utilize the strategies I shared today, or feel free to talk to me anytime to learn how we can tackle these things together. And when it comes to how we can help recommend PIMs, MDMs, ERP systems, integration middleware, help with roadmap and strategy. All of these things are at your disposal just a phone call away. Thank you. Please give me good scores. I know we only have a couple minutes, but are there any questions or anything?
So, as you know, I'm from Surumi Pump, and you know our data well, or lack thereof. And so when you have data in a lot of different silos, is there a best practice on how to start to consolidate that?
I will always prioritize individual categories or products.
So like product categories?
Yeah, because typically you'll be able to find every product category, if your information architecture, IA, is reasonable, every product inside of a certain category will have the similar attributes and the similar priority of values. So you could quickly go category by category and say, these are the 4 fields that customers will need for this type of product. So that way, work on your most popular category and you could work all the way down. This is where things like focus on your capital equipment, your high margin categories before focusing on like components, accessories, fasteners. A screw's a screw's a screw kind of thing. So yeah, start with like your commercial and industrial pumps, end up at your landscaping pumps type of thing.
You mentioned using PIMs or DAMs to do like storage of product data. We are about to embark on a project where we rethink where our product data lives. Is there if our company is already going to license a DAM for other reasons, but we have the ability to build our products into there, build workflows into there, are there reasons why you might prefer a PIM over a DAM?
So a PIM is your product information manager. That's essentially storing all the data for every channel that you would need product information. It includes the assets and the documents for every channel. A DAM is operational. A DAM is where you store comps, you store the 70 photos that were taken of that product on that photo shoot day. And then you do your touch-ups, you do your comments, you select the final 3. Those 3 would then be referenced in the PIM. So a DAM is more operational on the creative and marketing side, while the PIM will be your actual final source of truth. So Yeah, dams get a little cloudy, but yeah, that's where if you're talking about putting together good data quality holistically, a dam will never be that solution.
So you guys are like, yeah, then talking specifically about like Content Hub, for example. And it's been kind of pitched to us as like you could put all your product data into Content Hub. You can do that kind of. When they say things like that, do they mean Content Hub has a PIM built in, or do they mean we're salespeople selling you a product?
So that's where I would say corner Jonathan Price or Casey and just be like, they said this, is this true? I will say that everything a technology platform provider says is true. It's to the extent of the efficiency of everything there. So that's where a subject matter expert like Casey or JP will come in a lot of strength, and we're happy to do calls with them and even internally to help set up, questions that you should ask.
Thank you for listening to Modern Marketing Messages. Check out below for more information about this episode and AmericanEagle.com's digital marketing services. This podcast is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios. I'm Taylor Karg, and we'll be back with another Modern Marketing Message.